The stock market is the greatest psychological battlefield on earth. It is an arena where the contest is not merely between a speculator and the ticker tape, but between a man and himself. The average trader believes his enemy is external, a bear raid, a manipulative insider, or a sudden unlucky turn of events. He does not see that the most formidable, most persistent, and most destructive of all his foes resides not in Wall Street but within his own mind. Jesse Livermore, a man who conquered the market and was, in turn, conquered by it, knew this truth more profoundly than any other. He understood that the number one mental battle, the war that every trader must win or be destroyed, is the war against one's own human nature. His entire philosophy was built upon this stark realization. He saw that the market does not beat the average man. The average man beats himself. He brings his own worst enemies to the fight, the two great internal antagonists that have been the cause of all speculative ruin since the beginning of time. They are, as he warned, the speculator's chief enemies, always boring from within. Their names are hope and fear. These are not mere emotions. They are powerful, primal forces that cloud judgment, distort perception, and compel a man to commit the same catastrophic errors over and over again in a relentless and predictable cycle. This is not a theoretical discussion. It is a masterclass in self-control, a deep clinical diagnosis of how these two treacherous emotions operate within the mind of the trader. We will dissect how they manifest, how they lead to ruinous decisions, and we will begin to understand the profound psychological shift that Livermore had to make to conquer them. To win this mental battle is to win the game. To lose it is to guarantee that you will, in time, join the silent, impoverished 90% who have tried and failed. Before we continue, please subscribe and leave a quick comment, even one word. This small action helps the algorithm show this video to more people and tells me these deep dives are worth making. For those who are committed to this journey of knowledge, who return to these lessons to sharpen their minds after the inevitable setbacks of the market, your support is the fuel that keeps this channel going. Let us first examine the more obvious and more openly discussed of these two great enemies. Fear. Fear in the market is a multi-headed hydra, each head capable of inflicting a unique and devastating wound to the speculator's account. The most common and tragic of these is the fear of giving back a profit. The amateur trader, having finally made a correct and profitable trade, is not filled with the calm confidence of a man whose judgment has been validated. He is instead filled with a sudden and overwhelming anxiety. He sees the small green number on his ledger, a fragile and fleeting paper profit, and he becomes terrified that the next tick of the tape will erase it forever. This fear compels him to sell, to snatch his meager gain, to lock in a small, certain win. He comforts himself with the old misleading adage, "You never grow poor taking profits." Livermore knew this to be a dangerous half-truth. He countered, "No, you don't. But neither do you grow rich taking a 4-point profit in a bull market." This fearful impatience is the enemy of all great speculative campaigns. The big money, the life-changing money, is never made in the small, day-to-day fluctuations. It is made, as Livermore discovered, by identifying a great primary trend and having the courage to sit tight. The trader who is ruled by the fear of losing his small profits guarantees that he will never, ever achieve a large one. Another more aggressive form of fear is the fear of missing out. This is the fear that drives the public into the market at the very peak of a boom. A stock has been advancing for weeks, for months. The amateur watches it with a growing sense of anxiety. He is afraid of being left behind. Finally, as the stock reaches its final euphoric peak, his fear of missing out becomes unbearable, and he plunges in, buying with both hands at the very top. He is not buying based on analysis, but on a panicked emotional reaction to the crowd's excitement. This fear-driven greed is what ensures he is always the last one into a move, and the first to be annihilated by its reversal. Livermore learned to master his fear by developing an ironclad discipline and by listening only to the objective, unemotional verdict of the tape. But one of his great contemporaries, The legendary William Gann sought to conquer fear through a completely different and far more esoteric method, while Livermore was the supreme pragmatist, reacting to the market's message. Gann was the supreme theorist, a man who believed that market movements were governed by a precise mathematical and even cosmic order. He sought to forecast the exact time and price of major market turns using geometry and natural law. If Livermore learned to master his fear by reacting to the market, Gann sought to eliminate it by believing he could predict it. To explore this fascinating and different approach to market timing, we invite you to subscribe to our new channel, William Gann Trading Insights. The link is in the description below. As destructive as fear is, Livermore identified a second and far more insidious internal enemy. He considered it to be even more dangerous, for it comes disguised as a friend, as a virtue. That enemy is hope. Hope in every other human endeavor is a source of strength. But in the cold, impersonal, and mathematical world of the stock market, hope is a lethal poison. It is the great siren of the losing trade, the comforting whisper that keeps a man chained to a proven mistake. Its primary and most devastating function is that it forces a trader to hold on to a losing position. A speculator buys a stock, and it goes against him. The market, the final and absolute judge, is telling him that his decision was wrong. But the speculator does not listen. He begins to hope. He hopes it is just a temporary reaction. He hopes it will come back. He hopes that his initial opinion will be vindicated. He wrote, "In speculation, when the market goes against you, you hope that every day will be the last day, and you lose more than you should had you not listened to hope." This hope is what fuels the single most destructive of all speculative sins, the act of averaging down. The speculator, already in a losing position, decides to buy more. He tells himself he is improving his average price. In reality, he is reinforcing failure. He is throwing good money after bad. Hope is the psychological anesthetic that numbs him to the pain of this catastrophic decision. He is not acting on a reasoned analysis. He's acting on a desperate, wishful thought. Livermore was absolute on this point. Of all speculative blunders, there are few greater than trying to average a losing game. The trader who is ruled by hope is a man who cannot accept a small loss. He is impatient to avoid the finality of admitting a mistake. And so, paradoxically, he becomes infinitely patient with his losses. The same man who could not bear to sit with a winner for more than a day will now sit with a loser for weeks, for months, his capital and his spirit slowly bleeding away. He is a prisoner of hope, waiting for a miraculous reversal that almost never comes. This, then, is the great mental battle. It is the war against these two powerful and fatally inverted human instincts. Having now performed a complete and unflinching diagnosis of the speculator's great internal enemies, the destructive power of fear and the even more treacherous poison of hope, we arrive at the solution. The 90% fail because their natural human instincts are perfectly, fatally inverted. They are hopeful when they should be terrified, and they are fearful when they should be at their most courageous. To win the great mental battle, to cross the chasm that separates the amateur from the professional, a speculator must not eliminate these powerful emotions, for that is impossible. He must instead learn to reverse them. He must engage in what Jesse Livermore discovered to be the ultimate act of self-mastery, the great psychological inversion. This was not a mere trick or a clever turn of phrase. It was a profound and deliberate re-engineering of his own mind, a conscious decision to go against the grain of his own human nature. It was the forging of a new professional set of instincts, a framework for thinking and acting that was the polar opposite of the losing crowd. It was the secret that transformed the chaotic emotional battleground of his mind into a calm, orderly, and supremely profitable field of operation. It began with the most dangerous emotion of all, hope. Where the amateur in a losing trade felt the comforting warmth of hope, Livermore taught himself to feel a cold, rational, and intensely motivating fear. He stated it as a fundamental law of the psychological game. Instead of hoping, he must fear. This was not the paralyzing deer-in-the-headlights fear of the novice. It was the sharp, clarifying fear of the professional, the fear of a small, manageable problem growing into a catastrophic, unsolvable one. He was not afraid of the small loss he currently had. He was terrified of the monstrous loss it was certain to become if left unattended. This cultivated fear became the powerful psychological engine of his most important and most famous rule: to cut losses quickly. When a trade went against him, he did not allow himself the luxury of a single moment of hope. He did not tell himself it was just a reaction, or that it would surely come back. His mind, now programmed for survival, felt an immediate and urgent sense of danger. This fear was not a source of anxiety. It was a catalyst for immediate, decisive, and life-saving action. It was this fear that allowed him to treat a small loss not as a personal failure, but as a simple and necessary business expense. He knew that in the business of speculation, he would be wrong many times. To be wrong was not a sin. The sin, the unforgivable and expensive blunder, was to stay wrong. He wrote, with the clarity of a man who had paid for this lesson with millions, "A loss never bothers me after I take it. I forget it overnight. But being wrong, not taking the loss, that is what does the damage to the pocketbook and to the soul." This is the practical application of fearing your losses. It is the understanding that the small initial loss, the first loss, is always the best and cheapest loss. It is the price you pay for the invaluable information that your judgment was flawed. To accept this cost immediately is to act as a prudent businessman. To hold on, to allow the loss to grow in the hope of a reversal, is to act as a desperate gambler. The professional fears the loss and cuts it. The amateur hopes the loss away until it consumes him. Now we must turn to the other side of this great psychological inversion. While the amateur in a losing trade is filled with hope, in a winning trade, he is filled with a gnawing, persistent fear. He is terrified that his fragile paper profit will vanish. This fear compels him to sell too soon, to snatch a meager gain from what could have been a great fortune-making move. Here, too, Livermore did the exact opposite. Where the amateur felt fear, Livermore taught himself to feel a courageous and intelligent hope. He stated it plainly. Instead of fearing, he must hope. This was not the blind, desperate hope of the gambler holding a loser. It was a calculated, confident hope, a hope born not of wishful thinking, but of the market's own powerful confirmation. A profit, in his eyes, was the market's clear, unambiguous signal that his initial judgment had been correct. He was aligned with the great line of least resistance. The most powerful force in the speculative universe was now his ally. To abandon a position that had such powerful, tangible validation out of a petty fear of losing a few points was, in his view, an act of supreme strategic cowardice. This was the psychological foundation for his most profitable principle, the art of sitting tight. His greatest realization, the one that elevated him from a successful plunger to a legendary speculator, was this: it never was my thinking that made the big money for me. It always was my sitting. Got that? My sitting tight. The intellectual work of being right on the market was the easy part. The difficult and far more profitable part was having the courage, the hope, and the ironclad patience to stay with the correct decision. He immortalized this principle in the story of the wise old trader, Mr. Partridge, a man they called Old Turkey in the office. While the younger, more fearful traders were frantically jumping in and out of the market, taking small profits, the old man would simply hold his position in a great bull market. When a well-meaning friend, Elmer Harwood, urged him to sell his Climax motors and take a handsome 7-point profit, Old Turkey simply shook his head in distress. "My dear boy," said Old Partridge, "if I sold that stock now, I'd lose my position. And then where would I be?" He was not talking about his job. He was talking about his strategic alignment with the primary trend. He knew the real prize was not the 7 points he had now, but the 70 points that the great bull market was still to offer. His reason was simple, profound, and unshakable. Why, this is a bull market. He had the intelligent hope to trust the great underlying condition of the market over the small, frightening, and meaningless daily fluctuations. This, then, is the great inversion in its entirety. It is a complete reversal of the amateur's natural instincts. It is the discipline to feel fear when you are losing, and to have the courage to feel hope when you are winning. It is the understanding that a loss is a problem to be solved immediately through ruthless action, while a profit is a confirmation to be nurtured with intelligent patience. It is a difficult, unnatural, and lifelong battle. The result of this internal war, if won, is the mind of the master. It is a mind that has achieved a state of profound, dispassionate detachment. Decisions are no longer made in the chaotic heat of emotional reaction, but in the calm, quiet light of a disciplined, rule-based process. A loss is not a personal insult. It is a business expense. A profit is not a stroke of genius. It is the logical outcome of a well-executed plan. The speculator is no longer a participant in the market's great psychological drama. He is its calm, detached, and ultimately profitable observer. This is the ultimate prize in the #1 mental battle every trader must win. To achieve the great psychological inversion, to forge the professional instincts of fearing losses and hoping for profits, is to win the most decisive battle in the speculator's career. But the great and sobering truth that every master learns is that this mental war is never over. The victory is never final. The enemies within, hope, fear, greed, and ego, are not vanquished. They are merely suppressed. They lie in wait, patiently for a moment of weakness, a lapse in discipline, a moment of intoxicating success to launch their counterattack. The final and highest stage of the mental game, therefore, is not the achievement of control, but the lifelong, unwavering maintenance of it. This brings us to the most paradoxical and most dangerous of all psychological traps, the swelled head, the profound danger of success itself. After a period of great and consistent winning, a speculator begins to feel infallible. The market, which was once a complex and formidable puzzle, now seems a simple and accommodating thing. His judgment feels perfect, his timing flawless. He begins to believe he has solved the game, that he has achieved a state of permanent mastery. This, Livermore knew from brutal million-dollar experience, is the most perilous state of mind a speculator can ever enter. He wrote, with the clarity of a man looking back on his own ruin, "A great many smashes by brilliant men can be traced directly to the swelled head, an expensive disease everywhere to everybody, but particularly in Wall Street to a speculator. When a man is afflicted by this disease, his discipline erodes. The very rules that made him successful now seem like unnecessary constraints, rules for lesser men. He begins to take liberties. He overtrades. He increases his bet size beyond all reason. He makes commitments based not on the cold, hard evidence of the tape, but on his own, now arrogant, personal opinion. He forgets that he is not the master of the market, but its eternal student." Livermore's own career was a tragic testament to this cycle. After his first great million-dollar killing in the panic of 1907, he was on top of the world. He was the boy plunger, the king of the tape, and it was in this state of supreme confidence that he walked directly into the great cotton disaster orchestrated by Percy Thomas. He allowed another man's magnetic personality to overrule his own judgment, a mistake he never would have made in his hungrier, more humble days. He lost his millions not because the market beat him, but because success had made him careless. He had lost his sense of balance. The professional speculator must, therefore, be as vigilant in victory as he is in defeat. He must understand that success is a more treacherous and more subtle enemy than failure. This leads to the highest and most advanced of all mental disciplines, a concept so profound that it represents the final stage of a speculator's education. Livermore, having learned that he could not always trust his own mind, especially when it was flush with victory or reeling from defeat, came to a great conclusion. He said, "I have come to feel that it is as necessary to know how to read myself as to know how to read the tape. This is the art of reading yourself. It is the ability to step back, to become a detached, objective observer of one's own psychological state. It is to ask, before every trade, am I in a fit condition to speculate? It is to recognize the subtle but powerful signs of emotional compromise. Am I trading because a genuine high-probability opportunity has presented itself? Or am I trading because I am bored and crave action? Am I taking this position because my analysis is sound, or because I am desperate to win back the money I lost on my last trade? Am I holding this loser because the facts support it, or because my ego cannot bear to admit a mistake? To read yourself is to know when you are not fit for the fight. It is to have the supreme discipline to walk away from the market, not because the market is wrong, but because you are." Livermore learned this the hard way. He recounted times when he was sick, nervous, upset, and unable to reason calmly. He knew that, in the frame of mind in which no speculator should be when he is trading, every decision is likely to be a losing one. The professional knows that sometimes the most profitable trade is the one that is never made. He has the strength to wait, not just for the market to be right, but for himself to be right. This, then, is the ultimate expression of self-control. It is the final victory in the great mental battle. It is not about eliminating your emotions, but about understanding them, about recognizing when they are speaking louder than the facts, and about having the unwavering discipline to silence them. It is the understanding that your own mind, your own psychological state, is the single most important variable in the entire speculative equation. The final victory in the game of speculation is not a single giant seven-figure profit. It is not the adulation of the crowd or the title of king for a day. It is something quieter, something more profound, and something far more permanent. It is the consistent, daily, and often monotonous application of self-control. It is the victory over one's own human weakness. It is the quiet confidence of a man who knows he has a sound, proven, and disciplined process, and who has the ironclad will to follow that process in victory and in defeat, day after day, year after year. That is the only victory that truly matters. To truly learn from a master's mistakes without paying the million-dollar tuition fees yourself, there is no greater tool than immersing yourself in his story. Edwin Lefebvre's timeless masterpiece, Reminiscences of a Stock Operator, is more than a book. It is the closest thing a speculator can get to a flight simulator for the human mind. In its pages, you do not just read about Jesse Livermore's triumphs and disasters, you live them. You feel the gut-wrenching pain of his greatest blunders and the quiet, profound satisfaction of his most brilliant campaigns. For those truly committed to this deep study, we highly recommend the edition which includes a unique, detailed chapter-by-chapter analysis by Max Davidson. This analysis acts as your co-pilot, translating the century-old wisdom of the text into a clear, actionable roadmap for the modern trader, ensuring that the lessons learned in 1923 are as powerful and as profitable today as they were then. A link to this essential edition is provided in the description below.